show. She was only on Good Morning America. That's all. So she is going to talk. She's on the Today Show. You should know. Only Good Morning America. Which that's really freaking cool, right? Oh. I think Good Morning America should allow you to not talk. You don't want to. But you do. Like, I want to talk about this book, don't you?
I do want to talk about this book. Oh.
I don't. How's that?
I was only on Good Morning America for like 10 seconds, so I don't think I have the Samantha Guthrie of not talking.
Yeah. Okay, all right. You can say all the things that they didn't give you quite enough time to say.
Exactly.
I don't know, you looked really good and you sounded smart, so what else do you want?
You were drunk.
Maybe. So, hi. I thought we would start by just talking about how we met.
Yes.
Because Square Books was really kind of surprised when she was like, Jocelyn will drive me over from Atlanta.
Right,
but it was fun for us. We met when my first book, Gods in Alabama, came out, which was a few months before her first book, Sin in the Second City, came out. And she was living in Atlanta at the time. And she showed up to one of my events. I'm the kind of person who spent my junior prom in a basement rolling 20-sided dice. And so, she came and it was, I had a line and so she told me she had a book coming out, but I didn't get to talk to her very much. Well, she ended up hanging out with my friend Jill. And,
oh no, just to say, I was a fan of your book. I waited in that line because I wanted to meet you. I love Gods in Alabama. If you haven't read it, you should read it.
I mean, yes, you can actually, if you don't read it, you can actually go to hell. That's like in the Vegas. So, you showed up, and I didn't really talk to you. We just kind of met, and I was excited to have a book coming out. And Jill came up to me after. She was like, that Abbott chick, that is your soulmate. You have to meet her. I was like, did you see that girl? That girl is cool. No, I'm not going to meet that girl. I'm scared of her. Look at her. She's cool. I'm a dork. And I'm kind of feral. I live under the bed. And Jill was like, she was like,
didn't know I was feral and dorky.
I know. She comes off as cool. She's a feral dork. It's true. She's a stuffed feral dork. But I didn't know that, and I was like, ugh. So Jill was like, well, okay, shy animal. Why don't we'll go to your favorite restaurant, and I'll go too, and we'll just all three have dinner together. So I said, she hounded me until I said yes. So I showed up at the Blue Moon Cafe first, because I'm early, dork.
Reading at the bar.
I'm reading at the bar. And she comes in second. So we sit at the bar and we get drinks. And like 2 hours later, I don't think we had taken a breath.
No.
And it wasn't until then, and then we were drunk.
Right. And then I was like, I think we need to eat something.
Yes, because we'd been waiting for Jill for 2 hours. It still hadn't occurred to us that she never planned to show up, and this was a setup.
Oh.
And
so what do we order? The thing that naturally soaks up all the alcohol, grilled asparagus.
A huge platter of it. We were like, we want the family platter.
Yeah, because it was going to soak up all the alcohol.
Meanwhile, about 1 o'clock in the morning, the restaurant closed, and we had to call our husbands and be like, you guys gotta come get us. Like, we had been there since like 7, and we shut the place down. And the conversation has been going on ever since.
Yes, 20 years.
20 years. So we were 7 when we met, and she was 7. Yeah, it was 20 years ago. That's nice.
It was nice. It is nice.
So, and in all that time, you have been a truth teller.
Yes.
And I have been a liar.
Yes.
And finally, you have come to the dark side. I love it.
Although lying might be the good side sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes
nonfiction has some very terrible, evil people in it.
It's true. And you tend to write about most of them. So tell me a little bit, for those who haven't had the opportunity to read this book yet, I love this book. What is Where You End Up?
So Where You End, it is about 2 identical twins. They're actually mirror twins, which, if you've never heard of that phrase, it is a rare type of identical twin where the embryo splits later than usual. So it's like waits up until the last second and then it splits. And the result of that is that, one twin is right-handed, the other twin is left-handed, one twin will part their hair one way, the other twin parts their hair the other way. So looking at each other is akin to looking in a mirror. And it's a rare thing. And one of these twins suffers from this traumatic brain injury and has a unusual form of amnesia as a result. when she wakes up from her coma, she only remembers the face and name of her identical twin. She doesn't remember any of their past, any of their memories, any of their other friends, any family members, just the name and face of her identical twin. And so the twin who did not get into this accident, who does not have amnesia, sees this tragedy as an opportunity. And she's going to rewrite the entire history of their lives, inventing memories and a history and an identity that really has little to do with the lives that they had actually lived up to that point. So, you know, the other twin is left to sort of weave her way through this tapestry and start trying to figure out what is truth and what is lie, and who can I trust, or can I trust anyone at all?
I think my favorite thing about this book is that, like, a lot of times books of suspense, and this is I would say this is a thriller. It's a literary thriller, but it's definitely got like some. It's got a big engine and it flows. It's got some thrust, yeah. That like a lot of times with those kinds of books, and this is like a pet peeve of mine, is that you go along until near the end of the book, and then the big surprise is just something the narrator did not tell you. And the reason they didn't tell you was so they could surprise you 80% of the way through the book. I call that, like, what have I got in my pockets is from The Hobbit. Like, that's not a real plot.
It's a trick on the reader.
It's a trick, yeah, it's not fair. And what's cool about this book is Kat really doesn't remember.
Yeah.
So as she begins to suspect Jude and starts to do the investigation, you go along with her on that journey.
Yeah, she's an unreliable narrator, but she's unreliable because she really doesn't know.
Right.
And I should have mentioned the two twins are Kat and Jude. Kat is the one who has the amnesia, and Jude is the one who's concocting all of these like backstories and histories.
Where did the idea to use mirror twins named Kat and Jude come from, Abbott?
Well, since you asked,
No, I mean, talk about where the Kat and Jude came from and mirror twins.
Oh, so my mother is a mirror twin. Her name is Catherine. Her twin's name is Judith. And they were really a big part of the inspiration. My mom is right-handed, her sister is left-handed. They did part their hair on opposite sides. And there is a twin language, this twin language in the book that is actually inspired by the twin language that my mom and her sister spoke when they were little kids, and probably well into their adolescence, and maybe even when they were adults and never told me. Actually, a couple times I did see them talking like in whispers, and we didn't know what they were saying. They were very stealthy and sneaky.
Yeah. Do you have the pictures of them?
I do.
This is, I mean, it's a little Stephen King-y, but
it's a little Diane Arbusy.
Yes.
Oh.
There's my mom and her twin. Here's another one, even more Diana Arbusy. And my parrot took a big bite of the top. So, yeah. So they inspired the story, and also there was a documentary. I don't know if anybody had ever seen a documentary called "Tell Me Who I Am."
Well, yeah, you can take the nonfiction out of the girl, but you can't. No, you can take them out. I don't know.
You can take the girl out of
You can't.
You can't do it.
You can't do either of those things. Apparently. Because I think that with fiction, like the thing that is most unbelievable is always the thing that's true.
Yeah.
So, like you would say, if you were reading this book, you'd say the thing that rings the least believable would be like, oh, sure, this mirror twin gets in an accident,
right?
And then the only thing she remembers,
like that sounds like unbelievable amnesia. Like, what kind of amnesia is that?
Well, what kind of amnesia is that?
I do have to say one thing though, but you just hit on something really interesting. Was that nonfiction gets to be unbelievable. It can sound fake, but fiction always has to have truth to it. But anyway, so my fiction does have some truth to it. There was a documentary called Tell Me Who I Am, and it was about these identical twins, Marcus and Alex Lewis. Alex is the one who suffered a traumatic brain injury and lost everything except for Marcus's face and name, and Marcus is the one who decided to do what Jude does in the book and invent a bunch of memories and histories and things that his brother is going to have to try to navigate and figure out. So it's an excellent documentary if you ever are in the mood for something like that. And these twins sort of have a remarkable story that I wanted to twist into my own with the help of my mom and her sister. So
yeah, and so but I mean the plot, the lies aren't the same and the truth is not the same. It was just sort of the inspiration for like so why after these many years of truth telling, what made you up and decide to write a novel?
Well, fiction has always been my first love.
Yeah.
I've been talking about it for a long time, but when I was a kid, like I was a feral child in the basement, dorky child in the basement, reading Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock mystery magazines. Those were my sort of go-to reads. And I would write stories and submit to them. Like I would actually, sit there and try to think, oh, of course Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock are going to my stories. So I remember one pretty vividly. It was titled Tea with Mr. Roper. I'm a Gen X kid. Of course, everybody was watching Three's Company, in our generation, and I was obsessed with Mr. Roper, as one is. And the story was that this elderly woman would invite her neighbor, Mr. Roper, over for tea every day. She was very lonely, and Mr. Roper would patiently listen to all of her stories about her dead husband and the day she traveled in Europe and her parties and her dancing and all of this. And he could never even get a word in edgewise. She just was talking and talking and talking. At the end of the story, it's revealed that Mr. Roper was actually a decaying corpse in her pantry that she would trot out every day for tea.
A rose from Mr. Roper.
Yes. Shockingly, Tea with Mr. Roper was never published in Alfred Hitchcock. And also shockingly, my mother never put me in therapy. But that was the beginning of my fiction love, and I accidentally fell into nonfiction and became a journalist. And then when I came to Atlanta, I started thinking about books again, and was at that point so immersed in nonfiction that I just figured, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
But the process is it's weird because if you've read any of her narrative nonfiction, they read like novels. Like, my favorite book of yours, actually this is my favorite book of yours, I always prefer fiction. This is my favorite book of yours. But up until this book, I think The Ghost of Eden Park was my favorite because I love a courtroom thriller. And it reads like a courtroom drama. Like, it's a murder, and the whole thing unfolds, and there's trial transcripts and evidence, and you don't know who did it, and it really, it's the same
art. It was than fiction. It was,
Yeah, and you can get away with that because it really happened. Yeah. Like, when you're a novelist, you can't say, but it really happened. Your editor will say, but nobody will believe that.
Yeah.
Everything I've ever had to take out of a novel is always the thing that
was true.
Thing that really happened. Yeah. I had a pet chicken in a novel named Phoebe, who the neighbor woman had Phoebe in the house, and Phoebe would just poop. And she had like 26 litter boxes down, and if Phoebe pooped in the litter box, she just happened to, she'd be like, oh, she's potty trained. But I mean, there's 25 litter boxes down. Like every third time she's gonna hit
She's potty trained by default.
Right. And she let me have Phoebe the chicken, but she took out the litter boxes, and then like the real Phoebe had chicken wigs and outfits like aprons. She had a rubber bosom Dolly Parton outfit. Like, she had Dolly Parton boobs and red sequin dress and a Parton wig. They wouldn't let me put that in because it sounds crazy, but you could have put that in because it's true.
Yes.
But
I believe that is true too.
But like, I remember when you were working on your stuff, you would be like, I've got to find a book. I have to find a book. And you would prowl and dig through history. And is there enough here for it to be a whole book? I've got to find a book.
Yeah.
But then a novel, that's not how you do it. So how is that different for you?
I think with nonfiction, I have so much criteria that goes into what the story should be. First of all, it has to be a story that can read like fiction. It has to have a beginning, middle, and end. There has to be stakes. There has to be villains. There has to be a hero. There has to be escalating drama. There has to be like a really interesting climax. And in order to do that, you need a lot of primary source material. So when I say I have to find a book, I'm talking about I have to find the book, number one, nobody else has done yet, which is getting increasingly difficult. Everybody's writing it. Everybody's writing everything. But especially narrative nonfiction is just sort of ballooned in popularity. And it has to, number two, it has to have the primary source material. There needs to be diaries, memoirs, letters, court transcripts.
Because if you put dialogue in there,
yeah.
If she has it in quotes, the person said it word for word that way.
Exactly. So when I was writing Where You End, I was always comparing the process. In nonfiction, it's impossible to write bad dialogue. Right? I mean, if the dialogue is bad, it's because the people were, did not have interesting things to say. But it's all written down in the record, and you can't make any of it up. And then, it's frustrating though because the dead people don't always do what you want them to do. You know, at least in the novel, I got to make the people do what I wanted them to do.
Yeah, in nonfiction, sometimes people make good choices, and that's terrible for your story.
Yes,
you want people who are going to make terrible personal decisions.
So many times I was like, couldn't you just murder somebody right now?
Murder her. Yeah. But when you were like, I remember, like when you write nonfiction, you pretty much write an outline.
Yes.
And how long are your outlines?
How long? They're very.
How long is a normal Abbott outline?
My last outline for the Ghost of Eden Park was 113,000 words.
And how long is the Ghost of Eden Park?
93.
So you write an outline.
And then I carve the book out of it.
And then you go and carve the most interesting path through those facts.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of necessary when you're dealing with, like, sometimes I had an 8,000-page court transcript. You basically are writing down every single thing that happened and deciding then what is interesting enough and where the connections can be made. While so-and-so was doing this on this day, this other person was doing this on this day. You can sort of use that to see where the stories intersect and everything.
And how that speaks to the moment in history you're trying to bring to life. And how that speaks to you personally, because part of finding a book is to tell a story that thematically hits what you care about.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, for you, right, I think that a thing that I see in all of your books is this sort of idea of nature versus nurture.
Yes. That's one thing, yeah.
And talk about nature versus nurture and where you end.
So, I was very interested in the idea of these two twins who really, they begin life as the same person. And I did a lot of studies on twins in general for this book, just to sort of try to branch out from my own experience. And of course, you all probably heard a lot of those studies about twins who were raised separately and ended up having eerily similar lives, even marrying people that named the same name or kids the same names or up in the state professions. And one story really haunted me. There were identical twins who volunteered in the Red Cross during World War II. And on the way back, like on the boat on the way back to New York City, one of the twins got up on the bow of the ship and jumped, and the other one jumped in the next second. And it struck me as like, did they talk about this beforehand? Did they plan this? Or did one decide to do it and the other one didn't even think about it and just followed her? Or did she think about it and say, I can't live without my twin? Like, what was the thought process? And I began thinking a lot about how people make decisions when they're that close to another person. And, was Kat, after this amnesia, was she the same person that she always had been? And were Jude's lies change her? Did Jude want to change her? These are all things that Kat is grappling with. When at some point in the book, it comes to the idea where Kat says, I remembered my sister's face and name because she's the only person I can trust. And that eventually turns to, did I remember Jude's face and name because my mind was warning me, and this is the person I should remember and be afraid of? And in the midst of all of this, nature versus nurture. What?
Yes. Oh, this is, okay. Before you go into that, though, this is COVID, right? This is COVID.
Yes.
The reason she's writing fiction is because the archive's closed. She's in the middle of a nonfiction book, and she can't, and she's always wanted to do it.
Yes.
And so she starts writing novels, and she has a couple of different ideas, and she settles on this one, which is very much about nature and nurture. And in the middle of that,
I got my results back from Ancestry.com and 23andMe and discovered that the man who raised me was not my biological father. Yeah, so, dun, dun, dun. So it was, my biological father was a sperm donor. She's actually the one that figured it out.
That's true. She called me and she was like, "Yeah," and I was like, novelist brain. Sperm donor baby. You're a sperm donor baby.
And she was a sperm donor baby. But
and this was, I'm sorry, this is probably overshooting on your part. This is so interesting. This was, back, she's Gen X, so this was back before cryogenics was where it is and freezing was. So like her dad was kind of going out the back door when her mom was coming in the front door.
Literally.
Literally. There would be like an hour of viability. And the same guy is her dad, is her brother's kid. Yeah. I met your mother and I just thought, this is not a torrid story. This is a sperm donor baby. She's just lovely. Like, you just couldn't imagine her sort of Nicholas Sparksian,
Yes, horrible Bridges of Madison
tsunami sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So where were we at? Yeah, so I just was thinking about nature versus nurture more. But yes, the question of, when you're that close to somebody but you don't know the story of your history with that somebody, like your mind can start playing tricks on you.
And it's that thing of when you write a novel, right? You think you're just telling this story and you're very clever, and sometimes you don't realize until 2 years after it's published how absolutely you've just kind of cut yourself open and been like, look everybody, it's my liver, like it's this very, and then for you though, at that moment, like you couldn't not know what you were writing about as you're trying to redefine yourself.
Yes.
And understand why maybe you didn't fit into your family in some of these ways and stuff. It's really informed the book in some really interesting ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. So we have. I could go on talking for you.
Oh no, I'm going to let them ask you questions. I'm just asking before you guys. Get ready, it's happening. That's right. You want to talk about what you guys want to talk about, but just before that, like, is there anything else that you really like to say?
I think people are interested in, especially if there's any writers in the room interested in, like, and I hate saying process, but like, I just want to talk for a second about.
Why do you hate saying process? I love that.
I don't know.
Is it not pretentious?
It just
sounds
sounds like
your hair, or?
It just sounds like it's like either something you did to your hair or like it's like surgery. It sounds like a surgery to me. When I don't know. I guess writing is kind of surgery sometimes. It's painful.
Yeah.
But when so going back to my 113,000 word outline, I tried to do the same thing for this novel. I started writing like an outline, and I was like, here are the characters, and here's what they're going to do. Here's what they're going to do every single day. Here's what they're going to say. And my outline, I was like, oh my God, the book is just about written.
Done.
It's done. Like the book is, I just have to carve the book out of the outline. And so I sent it to Joshilyn, all excited and pleased. I can't wait to hear what she's going to say. And she calls me up and says, Abbott, honey, no. No. And she was like, this is not how you write novels.
This is not a book. This is an outline. And why would this person who just did this do this? Like, why would she do that? And she's like, because that's what happens next. But like, it's the same thing. Like, it's weird coming out of history. I don't think I could. I'm such a...
You lie too, like lying too much.
I like lying too much. I'd be like, this would be so much better if...
Yeah.
And I really like it. But if I were trying to do that, I mean, we did. I was working on a nonfiction book proposal, and I sent it to her, and she was like, hi, Bunny. No. So, it's the same thing. It's just, and it's weird to me because you end up with the same kind of, at the end you have a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end that's looking at something thematically that has murder in it, because yes.
I know. I will never write a book that doesn't have some kind of murder in it.
Yeah, somebody's got to die, man. Okay, well, so that was good, because that gave you guys time to think about what you might want to ask about. Anybody have anything they want to ask? Okay, here's the truth.
Any weird
I'm going to tell you the absolute truth. When the minute I say to somebody have a question to ask, there's this weird, like, time continuum schism that opens up between us. And, like, on that side, you, like, go on living your normal lives, and on this side, like, time slows down to a point that, like, if, like, 7 seconds pass, like, we might, like, both complete menopause and die. Like, just age out. So,
our
like,
corpses will be up here.
Yeah, so get ready. I'm going to say it again. And if you're the first person to, like, get a hand up, you're going to be, like, our favorite.
Or tell me a story. I love hearing stories from people, especially if creepy twins in your family.
And it sure won't become a book or anything. You're safe here. This is a safe space.
Yes. We don't take fodder at all from people we meet.
Tell your secrets to novelists. Yes, Maya, you're our favorite.
So, one, I do have twins in my family, and I still cannot tell the difference between them.
Do they take advantage of that?
No, they are mature, and they love me, so they don't do that to me.
As
But
far as you know.
as far as
Maybe
I
they're
know.
just so good at it.
Are they the boys or girls?
Girls, Katie and Cameron.
Oh, nice.
But a question, actually, besides the writing process being hard, what was the most fun part of writing a murder thriller?
Oh, God. You know, so all of the things that I get frustrated in nonfiction were completely removed. You know, it's like so many times it's like the dead people aren't doing what they want them to do, and the chronology is like, I can't move world events, and things are stubborn, and I didn't have any of that in fiction. It was kind of like, oh my God. It was like thrillingly liberating, but also terrifying. Because we can write bad dialogue, and we can make bad choices in the narrative, and there can be wrong plot twists that maybe should not have twisted so much.
I can't remember what book it was, but I remember you saying to me over drinks one time, if World War I had ended 3 years later, could you just imagine the thematic resonance I could get out of this moment? I'm like, I think people would notice. If you just,
1950 and ended in but so it was just sort of, you know, it was really scary, but also really thrilling because I could just say and do whatever I wanted, and it was I felt like deliciously villainous, you know, like in my tiny little New York City apartment where my office is like, you know, in New York they carve like a slice of a room and call it an office. Like I can fit my right leg in there, you know, it's in my office. And just being there in this like little cramped little space where they're like my ideas are closing in on me, which was like a great feeling. I never had that before.
her office is like a built-in desk, a chair, and a parrot stand so that her bird can eat her resources. And like they call it a bedroom.
In my acknowledgments, I name my parrot and I say, you know, he's a great companion, but literally the only thing he did for this book was crap on its pages, which is true. He's right there, crapping and reading.
So he was your editor?
My parrot, Pauline Kael. Although that's movie critic, but that's,
So do you feel, okay, you wrote nonfiction, you said it's static, you have to follow the rules. Did you feel like your characters are, in your fiction were like organic and grew and they told you what they should be doing?
That's such an interesting question, because like before when I would hear novelists say that, and granted I had not written a novel by that point, but when I heard novelists say that, I was like, what are you talking about? You are in charge of these people. You are in charge of these creations. Like, what do you mean they started doing their own thing? Like, you just are losing control of your mind. Like, you were just losing it. But the further I got into doing it myself, I realized what they meant. And it's not that they start taking on a mind of their own. It's that, to me at least, it's that you created these people and they become real to you in a way that if you start making decisions that contradict what they are or who they are, you know, you have two choices. You either change who they are or you change the narrative. And at that point, you like who they are and you want to follow who they are. So that's when it's kind of like they become, you know, they become real. It becomes real because you created it. And you have to start writing around to treat them, you know, as real people you created.
It's also true that the reason you created those characters is because they speak to something in you, in the dark and salty reaches of your own mental illness.
Yeah.
And so
And they're very dark and salty.
yes, they're, and when you try to push them away from that because it feels too personal, the book gets really bad, and the characters are like, no, you don't care about that.
Yeah.
I know you because I've come out of the swamps that you don't want to look in.
Exactly.
Insane.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you cut up a limb and like it regrows.
Yeah.
Does that really happen?
I mean, I don't know.
Or like those worms where you cut in like another room.
I don't know. It's just like this thing where it is like, I think that like in another 3 years and when you finish the second novel that you're writing now, like you're going to be horrified at how personal this book is in ways you didn't see.
Yeah. But it's, I don't know. I felt like I had to do something personal.
It's really good. Beth Ann Finley.
Hi, girls. I'm
Hi.
so glad you came
Noted
down. So COVID is over, Abbott. So are you going to go back to the archives and do a nonfiction book next, or is
I
it
do.
fiction?
I have a nonfiction book coming out next year, which is the first time in my life that I've had books come out back-to-back years. Which is so exciting because my last book came out in 2019, and I'm like, oh God, by the time I have another book come out, I'm always like, does anybody remember anything like that I've ever done? Because it's so long. But I have a book coming out next year. It is called Then Came the Devil. It is the true story of a group of settlers who left Germany in the years leading up to World War II, when chaos and unrest was starting to ramp up in Europe. And they had a big idea to build a utopia on the remote Galapagos island of Floriana. And as utopias do, it went awry.
It's sort of like Lord of the Flies, but with grown-ups, a lot more sex, a topless baroness with a gun.
Yeah.
I love this one. And two boyfriends.
And she comes and announces she wants to turn the whole place into Miami, which, as you can imagine, does not go over well.
So there's a utopia building, and then the baroness shows up with no top and two boyfriends and a gun going, we're going to make it Miami!
Yeah, so it's pretty much.
Somebody gets murdered.
Yes, so that's the next nonfiction. And when I say it really is stranger than fiction, I could not have written it as a novel. I absolutely would have been denied.
Nobody would believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, the baroness, you already don't believe it, but she has pictures and evidence.
I have video.
She has video.
So,
Here's an easy one. What's the name of that documentary about the male twins?
it's Tell Me Who I Am.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yes, Cody. Last one.
Oh, all right. So the Jude and Kat's mother, Verona, where did she come from?
Oh.
Perhaps, hopefully, maybe unrelated. What does your mother think of her?
That's a good question. So Verona was inspired by, if anybody is familiar with the burlesque star Gypsy Rose Lee, and the famous Broadway musical and the famous movie and all of that, and Mama Rose, her overbearing stage mother, who is desperate for a star of her own, her own sort of turn in the spotlight. A little bit of that, little bit of Mama Rose in there. I wrote a book about Gypsy Rose Lee, and I'm always fascinated by her mother, and sort of how one navigates life with a mother like that. My mother is not like that. She has other vices besides stage hunger. She likes to gamble, which there's some gambling in the book too. So I put my mom in there in that terms. My mom apparently is loving the book. I was a little worried about it because her twin sister sadly is no longer with us. And I can only imagine, she never speaks about her. She never speaks about her twin. And to see her twin's name on the page, Jude, I can imagine sort of brings up a lot of stuff for her. My father, by the way, is also a twin. Not the sperm donor dad, the other dad.
So no relationally, it's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. And his name also makes an appearance in the book, but I won't spoil that. So, yeah. You might be able to figure it out, though. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.
Talking about books and stuff with us.
Yeah, thank you.